Yes, indeed. Welcome in, folks, to the latest edition of College Basketball Coast to Coast. It is a Sweet 16 edition of the program as we head into Thursday and Friday at four different sites: Newark, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Indianapolis for the men's 2025 NCAA tournament, all culminating with regional final winners that will meet in San Antonio for the men's Final Four next weekend, and we will be there live on these platforms. I am the somewhat competent host, TJ Rives. I got a roll call of guests coming up in a few moments. He's due to be with us. Tyler Jones is here. He's in the Big 12 footprint in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I love Tyler's insight on all things college hoops with the Jones Report, his podcast, with Chat Sports on the YouTube platform. Tyler will be here to talk a little Big 12. Houston, the number one seed in Indianapolis. Texas Tech all the way out west with Florida playing head-to-head in Arkansas. BYU and Arizona, new members of the Big 12. They're both in the East bracket with Arizona playing Duke. And how many points are going to be scored in that BYU-Alabama game? So Tyler will be here in a little bit to talk with me. Also here within the first half hour, Adam Zagoria, our insider, NJ.com and the Zags blog. Adam will be aboard. He has spent the day at the practices in Newark, New Jersey for those Duke, Arizona, Alabama, BYU matchups. So Adam will give us some insight on that, the crazy coaching carousel. Like every 5 minutes, there's a new coach hire going on right now in college basketball. The transfer portal, the coaches switching, the NIL. Adam will try to make heads or tails of it. And then later on in the program, dare we say the best for last, Hall of Famer from the U.S. Basketball Writers Association Hall of Fame, Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, and also the bracketologist for Fox Sports as well. Love Mike's insight. Got a 40-year career covering college basketball and all the Final Fours. I want to talk to him about whether we've stamped out the mid-majors with NIL and the transfer portal. Get Mike's thoughts on a team that maybe we're not talking as much that we should be talking about, somebody like an Ole Miss or like I mentioned, Texas Tech. Maybe we're not talking enough about BYU. Get his thoughts on the Sweet 16 as we head to the Final Four. Again, thank you for finding us wherever you have found us across the platforms on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter X, even after the fact. Thank you for finding us. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you're locked in and following on the CBB Coast to Coast Twitter handle as well. For all of our different platforms, Facebook as well. I'll put it up on the screen for those that are watching. We're also a podcast, by the way. Take us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, in audio form. You're watching the video show right now. Feel free to comment. If you're watching us live, I'll see comments as they come in via YouTube, via Facebook, Twitter, etc. Send those on as we rock and roll. And we will be on after each of these games and game nights on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night as we dwindle down to the Elite Eight for the weekend and then the Final Four right here on these platforms. My wingman, Jason Powers, as well as Matt Zimick, the West Coast Bureau Chief, Ari Russell, Tyler Jones, Adam Zagoria, our insider, on and on down the list. Get Deshaun Tate in Atlanta, by the way, covering the South Regional with Auburn, Michigan, and Michigan State against Ole Miss. Get all the insight from all over college basketball right here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. All right, so without further delay, let's bring on our first guest and say hello from the Jones Report and Chat Sports. Let's talk some Sweet 16 and much more. Hello to Tyler Jones with me on a Thursday night or on a Wednesday night headed into Thursday and Friday night on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Brother Jones, it's about to be that time again. How you feeling?
I am feeling great, TJ. It is always a pleasure anytime we get the chance to chat. We're just a week away from you and I being in lovely San Antonio for the Final Four. But
that's right.
Now we got to figure out who is going to join us there. And I want to say one point off the top, TJ. A lot of narratives about NIL destroying the tournament and all this. And I know you're a numbers guy. I'm seeing the TV ratings say otherwise. I think people love the big brands. I think college basketball is fine.
Well, why don't we go right there with one of the topics that we are definitely going to be talking about throughout this show, and that is what's going on with the mid-majors and the fact that we don't really have one. Now, we've had them in recent years. 2 years ago, Florida Atlantic made the Final Four. We saw St. Peter's as a 15 seed make the Elite Eight 3 years ago. Do you believe that NIL is going to stamp out once and for all the mid-major teams from being Sweet 16 and Elite 8 teams, or do we need a couple of more years of this as a sample size? What do you think?
I think it's way too early to write off the mid-major teams and say that it's over for them, that they are eliminated from this NIL campaign. Because here's something that I would keep in mind, TJ, is typically what we've seen, and this goes even prior to the NIL era, is that these mid-major teams, they go on a run, and then their players enter the portal, or they even transferred and sat out a year and then went to their next location, where the NCAA tournament was their coming out party, where they stood out among the rest, and that's where they got their recognition and where the other schools were able to capitalize and take advantage. Obviously, that didn't happen this year, but that is still the path forward, I think, for most of these mid-major guys to stand out, is what they do in the NCAA tournament. So I think with that said, that this will all sort itself out. Things will be fine. I think this year was a little bit different. It was a top-heavy year. We said that going into this tournament anyway to begin with. And the name brands, this is what draws eyeballs. You're getting the 4-power conferences from the football side of things. I think it more has to do with the investment that these football conferences have put in to the NCAA tournament and college basketball, with the money advantage that they have to bring in players from the basketball schools to stay long-term, and guys that were already star players coming over, as opposed to what the mid-majors have done in the past of using the tournament as their launching point.
Again, they're going to get rated by the power schools that have so much money. It's no coincidence that the SEC and the Big Ten have 11 of the teams in the 16 here with the money that they have to spend. But there's so many players to go around. You can't rate all of them. That's part of the point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There's 350 plus teams in college basketball. And I think, too, one thing that we ought to keep in mind is a lot of these excuses being made for the mid-majors and the basketball schools. Well, you think about the NIL circumstance, these football schools, their money is still going to football first, and then basketball is coming in secondary. They have an advantage on the football schools of that being their primary source. So I'm tired of hearing the excuses. I think there's still an avenue for these mid-major schools to compete. Their time will come again. This year just wasn't their year. I don't think we need to overreact.
I'm with you. I love Tyler's insight on all kinds of things. All right, so let's get into it a little bit with the Big 12 here. In particular, this is looking ahead to Friday and the Houston Cougars as they get ready to play against Purdue in what could be a real hornet's nest in Indianapolis. It's expected there'll be at least 15,000 or more pro Purdue fans in Indianapolis, only about an hour away. It might be 20,000 or more. I noticed the configuration at Lucas Oil Stadium is not like what they're doing for the Final Four. They actually have it at the one end. It looks like it's going to have about only 25,000 seats maybe, but more than half of that might be Purdue fans. All right, Houston's the top seed, excellent on defense. How much of a concern is the pro Purdue crowd? What say you, Tyler?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, Houston went into Allen Fieldhouse and beat my own Kansas Jayhawks earlier this year when they trailed by 6 points twice in regulation and in overtime in the toughest environment in the country, and still came back to win that game. So they've been dealing with this before. They have a veteran team with some really talented players like Cryer and Sharp and among others here. They're going to be just fine. I don't think that the moment is going to be too big. And the thing that I like about this Houston team compared to this time a year ago, TJ, is they're healthy. Last year, they were so banged up that, they got eliminated early. And I believe it was to Duke last year, that game that they ended up losing.
Right.
This team's in good shape. They have veteran pieces. They got good guards. They play good defense, and they have one of the best coaches in the country. I feel pretty fine that Houston's going to get the job done. The
only real concern is Jawan Roberts' ankle. He looked like he was fine. Again, the competition last weekend is SIU, Edwardsville, and Gonzaga. And Gonzaga gave him some problems in the last 7-8 minutes of the game and got back in the game. This will not be easy, though, once again, to emphasize it. Purdue's got scorers. They will have some crowd behind them. Several pieces from the Final Four team last year. What a matchup. What a matchup for Friday night. One more time.
Oh, absolutely. Great matchup for Friday night with two of the, I would say, power programs of college basketball. We expect Houston and Purdue to be competitive at this point. It's no surprise that either one is in the Sweet 16 at this juncture. And I look at the matchup, kind of breaking this down piece by piece. Purdue shoots about 49% from the field. Houston shoots about 46. 3-point numbers are pretty similar. Free throw numbers are similar. Rebound advantage, slight edge to Houston. One thing to watch, I think, is going to be the way that they grab extra possessions. Houston averages close to 5 blocks a game and 8 steals, compared to about 6 steals for Purdue and just a little under 2 blocks per game for Purdue. Getting that extra possession or two for Houston, that could be the difference. And that's why I would keep tabs on their defense being a big difference in this one.
And again, Kelvin Sampson does an amazing job of the culture there defensively, which is if you don't communicate, if you don't help on defense, if you don't guard, you're not going to play. Forget about how good an offensive player or three-point shooter you are. That's what he has instilled. So that's a lot there, obviously, for Friday. Let's go to tomorrow night and San Francisco, where there's a bunch of attention, obviously, on Florida. And I'm in the state of Florida. A lot of people, you know this about me, Tyler, think I'm in the state of confusion. I'm in the state of Florida. The Gators are the top seed. They're all the way out in San Francisco. They get ready to play Maryland. The second game on deck is Texas Tech and Arkansas. Do you have a thought on the Red Raiders, and are they maybe a little bit under the radar, even though they're the 3 seed here? Out of all the 16 teams, is it me or are we not hearing a whole lot about Texas Tech out of the Big 12 for this matchup with John Calipari's Hogs on Thursday night?
I think you're absolutely right about this, that Texas Tech is being totally slept on, forgotten about, and that's really been the theme for this Texas Tech team all season. They're a 3 seed, but I mean, based on the way that the attention they're getting, you would think that they were a 7 or 8 seed, but it's a well-rounded team. They shoot 47% from the field. We've seen that this roster has really come together and played well as a collective unit. Just across the board here, what they do from Cambridge to Anderson, a number of guys here. They play just some really good team basketball. And I look at this Arkansas team. They're a little bit healthier now. And I would say that for Arkansas, what's interesting is you look at what they did against Kansas, what they did against St. John's. That's a team that I mentioned health. They are just now playing together really for the first time all year with Fland and Davis and Adebayo and such. I mean, they haven't had those guys, and they're just now hitting their stride. So I think this is a sneaky good matchup between these two teams that could go either way. I lean towards Texas Tech, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Arkansas finds a way. John L. Davis has been here before. He knows what it takes, and Kenny Smith will be the first to tell you guards win in March.
Yep, and Boogie Fland being back, how much more will he play? He played some this past weekend in the wins over Kansas and over St. John's. Fascinating matchup. And again, we should mention here that for Texas Tech, Arkansas, Florida, and Maryland, no real regional advantage for all of them to go out west. It's whoever's fan base can scramble out there and get the most fans in the building in downtown San Francisco. I'll be fascinated to see how much of Raider power, as they call it in the Big 12, will be out there. Hey, fun one for you. We're going to talk with Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, their lead columnist, Basketball Hall of Fame writer, about the BYU-Alabama game a little bit later on in the show, but you get first dibs. Is this game going to be like 104-103 in Newark tomorrow night in game one up on the floor? Do we expect some semblance of defense for Brigham Young and Alabama here?
It is going to be some fireworks. I can tell you that much. I mean, we know how good Alabama is. I don't think anybody would be shocked if they're in the Final Four with their guys, with Sears and company. They just got so much talent. They can score it so well. They've been able to contend with anybody all year. Grant Nelson's been terrific as well. But don't sleep on this BYU team. of what they've done. I mean, they shoot it well, close to 49% from the field. They average about 11 three-pointers per game. Alabama does a better job of getting to the foul line compared to BYU, and they're a better rebounding team. If BYU is going to win this one, it's going to have to come down to outside shooting. They're going to it sounds simple, but they're going to have to outshoot Bama, which very well could be the case. That's, to me, kind of what I'm looking for in this matchup is who gets the outside shots going. We know both teams can score at will, but if BYU has a better night outside, then they can win this game.
Love Tyler's insight. You're going to be with me here for a couple of more moments on college basketball coast to coast here tonight. Do you believe this tournament right now is Duke and really everybody else chasing Duke? Is that too simplistic? Are we dissing Houston? Are we dissing Auburn and anybody else? What do you think, Tyler?
So there was a conversation you and I had on the Jones Report a few weeks ago about would you take the field or Auburn and Duke? And as I've seen the last couple of weeks, even though Duke is playing very well, I do think the competition is close. I do think Duke looks like the team to beat, and I've picked them to win the national title. Cooper Flagg, the best player in the country, and all the talent that they have there. Duke is doing a lot of things right. But Auburn is good. Houston's good. Florida's good. This is one of the deepest Sweet 16s we've ever seen. And it only takes one slip up before we're talking about potentially Duke being upset and this being over for this Duke team, of an off night shooting. And although Duke has played so well, I think that you could argue that they've been so good for the last month that they're due for that off night to happen. Now, as you know, good teams find ways to win on their off nights, and that could be the case with Duke. But what we saw from UConn, think about this the last few years, they just boat raced everybody.
Yep.
And every single tournament came on their way to winning back-to-back national titles. I would be surprised Duke is able to boat race everybody along the way to win a national title. I think the talent's just too good to let that happen here.
And again, we looked back on that Final Four, and we kept saying, you look back on the Elite Eight, the Final Four game, and the national title game, nobody was beating UConn. And maybe in about 2 weeks, we're going to look back on the same thing, about 10, 12 days, and say nobody was going to beat Duke in the end. We'll see. Tyler, listen, great stuff. Thank you for hanging with me tonight. Let's see what happens here in the Sweet 16 at these 4 different sites of Newark and San Francisco, Indianapolis, and Atlanta. And I look forward to having you back on this weekend. I look forward to being with you in San Antonio as well, my friend.
Should be a great time. Should be a great time. Can't wait to be a part of it all. Final Four next week. Going to be fantastic. These next few days going to be very exciting. And I'll leave you with one more note. That Houston team that we talked about, very, very dangerous. It seems like this could be the time for Kelvin Sampson to finally break through. I think that might be the best story potentially to come out of this tournament if Kelvin Sampson finally got his first national title. Can they get there? Can they get there in the first place? We'll find out. Tyler, thank you, my friend. Have a good night. Appreciate it. Love it. There's Tyler Jones of the Jones Report. That's his podcast and chat sports as well. Follow him at Tyler Jones Live on social media. By the way, we make mention as well that we are brought to you by our friends at Ticket Smarter and the Ticket Smarter mobile app. If you're looking to go to any of these games, again, for the Newark, San Francisco games Thursday, for the Indianapolis and Atlanta games on Friday, use the Ticket Smarter mobile app. Sign up is easy. Purchase safe and secure. $20 off with the promo code COAST20. $20 off. Promo code COAST20 with Ticket Smarter, the Ticket Smarter mobile app. Your order of $300 or more, get the savings. Use that code as much as you want. Get in the game. Think smarter with Ticket Smarter. Remember that promo code COAST20 as things rock along. All right, without further delay, we continue on this Sweet 16 preview edition here of College Basketball Coast to Coast. Hello to our insider, NJ.com, and the Zags blog, to Adam Zagoria, who is fresh out of being at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey this afternoon, and is right here with us now live on a Wednesday night on College Basketball Coast to Coast to talk about Duke, Arizona, BYU, Bama up close. Good to have you, my friend.
TJ, good to be with you, buddy. I was out at Prudential Center for a few hours checking out the teams and talking to the players. It was a lot of fun.
No doubt. Let's pick up with what we left off with Tyler. A lot of people are wondering, is this Duke and everybody else? What did you sense being around them this afternoon?
And I agree with Tyler. Look, there's a lot of chalk, big picture, obviously, in the 16 teams left. There's 4 number 1 seeds. There's 3 number 2s. There's no real Cinderella. My gut says Duke is the best team. I picked them in my bracket. Nothing I saw today changes my mind on that. They've got the best player in the country in Cooper Flagg. These guys seem focused. The big news today was John Shire said Malik Brown, who's had a shoulder injury and hasn't played since March 13th, was possible to play tomorrow night. That's a big, could be a big deal for Duke. He's a big glue guy, rebounds the ball, makes everybody better. So even if he doesn't play Thursday, if they win and they get him back Saturday or later on, that could be a big addition for them.
Again, Cooper Flagg is getting the most attention, but we said this coming off the weekend. You look at the way that Proctor shot the ball against Baylor. Kneppel can score. They've got multiple guys to go to besides him. How big is this challenge for Arizona? And what were the Arizona guys saying about this challenge, Tommy Lloyd's team?
Yeah, look, all 4 teams here in Newark are, high octane, big time scoring offensive teams, right? Alabama, BYU, Arizona, Duke, all these teams can score the basketball. I think Duke is, also very good offensively. They're very connected. So I think Arizona understands that. One subplot here is Caleb Love, right? Arizona guard played. This is going to be his 10th game against Duke in his career. I know our friend Seth Greenberg talked about it on ESPN today. He's had some monster games. He had 28 when North Carolina beat Duke in the national semifinals a couple years ago. He also had 22 in the second half in Coach K's last game at Cameron Indoor when Carolina beat Duke. Now, he also had a poor game when he shot, he only scored 8 points when Duke beat Arizona by 14 earlier this year. So, I asked him kind of what gives you the confidence going against Duke, and he said he's from St. Louis. He's not afraid of anybody. He doesn't fear anybody. So, Caleb Love, I think, could be an X factor and a guy that has had big games against Duke in the past, and he'll be a guy to watch. But, of course, I asked John Shire about that, and he said their whole team is a problem, and he knows that, Caleb Love, could go off.
And obviously Love with the 2022 Final Four, we were all there. They ended Coach K's career, North Carolina. He had a big game for whatever that's worth. New setting 3 years later, but it's one more subplot for Arizona and Duke. Hey, what about the other game, Alabama and BYU? We keep talking about score in this game. Again, you were around those guys as well in Newark. Kevin Young is the first-year coach at BYU, a former NBA assistant. We know what Nate Oates has done. Well, what are your thoughts in the preview mode on BYU and Alabama as the 2 seed?
Yeah, well, just a quick injury update. Nate Oates said that Grant Nelson, who's been battling a knee injury and came off the bench against Robert Morris when they beat Robert Morris, said Grant Nelson's at about 90%. He's not 100%. He said no one is at this time of year, but that Grant Nelson should be good to go. He said Cliff Amori, the big guy who transferred from Rutgers, is good to go, so they should have their full roster. The Kevin Young thing is interesting. I confess, as an East Coast guy, I hadn't really, followed him that much, but he is a former, obviously, NBA assistant, with the Suns and the Sixers. He was close to getting the Brooklyn Nets head coaching job a couple years ago. And he talked a lot today about just bringing an NBA mentality, philosophy, staff to BYU, and how he's got all kinds of NBA staffers there and employs NBA spacing. And the players said they love playing for him because all the plays he draws up result in open shots. He's got a projected lottery pick there, and the Russian kid Igor Danim.
Yep.
And obviously they're getting A.J. DeBonsa, the number one player in the country, next year. So that BYU program is, got a lot going for it. They've also got huge NIL money. I reported that A.J. DeBonsa is getting about $7 million in NIL. So they got a lot going on there with an NBA-style coach, a lot of NIL money. And he's also sort of part of a larger trend, TJ, where we've now had a couple NBA assistants in this coaching carousel cycle take college jobs, right? Utah hired Alex Jensen. Iona hired Dan Garriott. So
Florida State with Luke Laux, right? The former player that's been an NBA assistant as well with Sacramento. Exactly to your point.
That's a good point. So Kevin was just talking about how there's sort of more similarity now between college, the G League, the NBA, just in terms of player movement, free agency, NIL, paying players. And so there's a lot of, it's not that – it's kind of like Bill Belichick going back to North Carolina, right? There's not much difference, although he said I think it's easier to get the players to listen in college. So I think both these games, it's going to be high-scoring affairs, you would think, right? Both games in like the 80s and 90s.
Adam is never off duty, by the way. You hear the dings, everybody texting him, everybody emailing him. He's always trying to find inside information. I got a couple of more subjects, and then we'll let you go here on a Wednesday before the Sweet 16. Hey, talk to me. You saw Arkansas in person. For the audience that has not seen and heard you and I talking about this, how impressed on the upset with St. John's, and now the matchup is Texas Tech. The weird thing is they got to go all the way out west. They went from Providence to Fayetteville, Arkansas, now all the way out to San Francisco. Texas Tech, same thing. They got to get out to San Francisco. Kind of a weird setting for the second game in San Francisco. But what about that Arkansas team that you saw? How dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're very long. They're very athletic. They have good, tough guards. DJ Wagner, Boogie Fland, Nelly. So, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's going to be tough because they're playing a very defensive-oriented team. But, look, they're coached by John Calipari. The guy's a Hall of Famer. I don't think people thought they would get this far. Certainly they started the season 0-5 in the SEC. Nobody saw this coming. But they took out, a really good St. John's team who can't shoot that well. But, when I was around them, they were playing with a lot of confidence. And, I think they're probably the underdog. I haven't looked at the spread.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that in San Francisco. And you and I talked off the weekend on Florida, so they're all the way out as the 1 seed in San Francisco with the matchup against Maryland. Derek Queen is obviously going to be a problem. Maryland's got good guards. Any quick thought on Florida and Maryland Thursday?
Well, I mean, look, we haven't talked about the coaching carousel here, but
we will here in a second. But go ahead. Yeah, bring it up. Bring it up now.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, all these. First of all, we talked about it, right? All these jobs are being filled. They were filled Monday and Tuesday by guys who were coaching in the tournament. It's obvious that they and their representatives were speaking to these other schools, their new schools, during and before the tournament. So nobody should complain about kids transferring when the coaches are doing it left and right. And this Kevin Willard storyline hangs over Maryland, right? Is he going to go to Villanova? Is he not? I know John Rothstein just reported he's weighing an offer of like $5 million a year from Maryland, where he's obviously had issues. He has been very public. He's not happy with the NIL situation. The AD situation is in flux. So, it could be one of these things where, they lose to Florida on Thursday, and on Friday or Saturday we get a press release saying he's the new head coach at Villanova, and the press conference is Monday. We've seen this 100 times. So that
We've seen this all week. We've seen it all week.
All week. So, as far as the game, I mean, look, Maryland's playing with house money. They're in the Sweet 16. They barely pulled it out on that game winner, Derek Queen. A lot of people said he traveled there. It was a huge shot. Florida's clearly the favorite. They're a lot of people's favorite to win the whole thing. But, Maryland's got a mojo and a confidence going right now.
All right. So again, that's another one of the top seeds. It's going to be busy. It's going to be crazy. Adam is feverishly working sources and reporting on these coaching carousel moves. You hear the dings in the background as we do this live on Wednesday night.
Sorry about
People
that.
checking in with him, and he's checking in with them on coaching moves, transfer portal. Keep it locked in. Follow him. If you're not seeing us, if you're only hearing us, follow him on social media at Adam Zagoria, Zagoria, NJ.com, as well as the Zags blog where he's writing up everything about this tournament. Have a blast in Newark. We'll catch up with you with whatever happens on the weekend in Newark for the Elite Eight. Thank you, Adam, on a Wednesday night. We appreciate it.
I'll see you poolside in San Antonio, my man.
We're looking forward to that. We'll talk before then, but you and I have some green chili enchiladas probably with our name on it. We'll see you later.
All right.
There goes Adam Zagoria with us here on a Wednesday night. It is college basketball coast to coast. My man Deshaun Tate, who is ready to cover everything with the Atlanta bracket and will be on these platforms on college basketball coast to coast coming up here on the weekend for the games in Atlanta with Auburn and Michigan and Ole Miss and Michigan State. He weighed in on a couple of these topics. First of all, he was very enthused that Tyler Jones was here on the program, saying, "Great job, Tyler," and saying that I will go to jail for these guys, or for Tyler, I think. I don't know if he'd go to jail for me. I'm not sure. Deshaun was also weighing in about the BYU matchup with Alabama, and is that going to be score, and says, "I like BYU. Keep an eye on Saunders and Demon, the Russian." Let's find out. Keep your comments coming in. I'll see them. If you're here with us live, we look forward to more of you weighing in. Good stuff with all of that. While we have a moment, let's talk about another sponsor on college basketball coast to coast. If you are seeing us, you're going to see the video on the screen. If you're only hearing us, that sponsor is Go Sleeves. These kinesiology technology knee sleeves and sleeves for the elbows and the calves. You need these in particular if you're a little older, advanced age, and working out. Why? It does a couple of different things with the Go Sleeve technology. It increases blood flow, as you see on the screen, and it also helps you, therefore, with recovery time. We love being able to recover quicker and manage the pain in the knees, the elbows, and in the calves. Go Sleeves is great, especially if you're a weekend warrior, a biker, a runner, a pickleball player, a basketball player, jogging, tennis, golf, any of it. Knee sleeves, elbow sleeves, mobility for all. They are all about it with the kinesiology technology. It is go time with Go Sleeves, a proud sponsor of what we do here as part of college basketball coast to coast. And we do have a promo code for you as well. That is GoSleeves.com/TJ. Get a savings on those knee sleeves, the elbow sleeves, the calf sleeves with Go Sleeves. We love their participation with what we're doing on college basketball coast to coast. So get the discount. GoSleeves.com/TJ on the promo code. All right, as we continue, let's get a little more preview here on this Wednesday night prior to the Sweet 16. Had a chance earlier to talk with Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, Hall of Fame basketball writer, has tremendous insight. You also see him on the Big Ten television network as well with his insight. The bracketologist of FoxSports.com as well. Love Mike's insight on all these fronts. Let's talk about these matchups at the 4 different regional sites. Has the mid-major been stamped out? And more, including maybe a team that we're undervaluing. Let's go to that conversation right now as part of college basketball coast to coast. As promised, I love this man's insight. We've been trying to make this conversation happen for like 2 weeks. We finally figured it out because I have been in Indianapolis and I have been in Atlantic City, and Mike has been on the Big Ten network and he's been covering the start of the NCAA tournament. But here he is on college basketball coast to coast in the preview mode for the Sweet 16 and then eventually the Elite Eight games this weekend. Good to have you, my friend. Now all is right with my March. I got Mike DeCourcy with me.
It wouldn't be March without me joining you, TJ.
Yes.
So it had to happen at some point.
I have been bothering you for the better part of about 25 years, and he still returns the text and the call. Can I request your insight and your expertise? Is it the end of civilization as we know it that a mid-major team didn't make the Sweet 16? Because all the internet hype and everywhere else is that somehow this is ruined forever because a Sweet 16 team did not include a mid-major, that NIL has killed it forever. The transfer portal has killed it forever. I'm almost being so hyperbolic and sarcastic myself. You know how I feel. What do you think about all of this the last 2 or 3 days?
Well, I think one of the most hilarious things about this is if you boil this down to its essence, this is a group of pundits, analysts, fans, whatever, saying we have too many good teams in our playoffs.
Right.
Think about that. That's what it is. We have too many good teams left in the playoffs. That's a bad thing. That's what they're trying to sell it.
And would they not be the same people that when you have two or three of the lesser teams that are on the other side of the argument saying this is not good for our playoffs, that we have two or three of the lesser teams? Same people.
2 years ago, on the eve of the national semifinals, I wrote and felt compelled to write that even though Florida Atlantic and San Diego State and Miami are in the Final Four, it's still worth watching. I had to write that. It's still going to be great, even though it's these three teams and UConn. And it ended up that they had among the lowest ratings of a Final Four that we've had. So I don't want to hear, first of all, I don't want to hear people make broad proclamations on one occasion. Okay, this is what happened, so everything that follows is going to conform to this. That's not sports. That's not the nature of this tournament. I can't say that all of that didn't have an impact. But who's to say that the mid-majors don't adjust to this and figure out a way to compete at a different level? Yes, of course, they're not going to have as many good teams and players as the SEC. They never have, TJ. Yep. Not in my career. I've been covering this since 1987, 88. That was my first year full-time on a college basketball beat. They've never had the level of talent that the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12, et cetera, have had. Never. At any point in that time, Big East. They have all gone up and down. The SEC from 2014 to 2016 got 8 total at-large bids in those 3 seasons. That's less than 3 a year. Now they're the best league in the country. It all is cyclical, and it also comes down to what you plan for and what you execute. The ACC assumed it would always be great at basketball and didn't and spent all of its energy on trying to get better at football. And they took their eye off the basketball, so to speak. And so they are where they are. Do I think they're going to be there forever? No, I think they need to look at getting better in a place where basketball is really important, and they can get back if they want to. That it's the same in the Big East. The Big East did not have the level of year that they wanted to have. However, the revenue share deal, when we get to that, does have the possibility of advantaging the Big East because they don't have to worry about the rev share with football players. They don't mostly have football players. Some of them have 1AA, FCS or whatever, but they don't have high major football programs. So they can spend their rev share dollars on basketball, and maybe they get better. We just don't know. Things change, and they're changing fast. But there's no ironclad. This is the way it's always going to be.
One more quick point on this. I guess part of the argument is the SEC and the Big Ten in particular have gotten so massive financially that they're always going to be able to buy through NIL everybody's best players, and that's somehow got to be curtailed or under control. Do you buy that even a little bit, that line of thinking?
Well, the idea that it should be controlled or it will be. I look, as it is now, that there will not be controls in the truest sense.
Salary cap. There will not be a salary cap. Right.
You can't have a salary cap if you don't have employees. It just doesn't work like that. And so we won't have that. But I don't think you need it to have broad competition. It's never been the case. I mean, hey, for years, for a long, very, very long time, you could get a $100,000 education at Duke or a $25,000 education at a state school, whatever. And that nobody made their decision based on that. So so we've had competition and all along, but Duke's advantage is not just what they pay or can pay their athletes. Their advantage is the brand they've built up, the network they've built up beyond that, all those sorts of things, and a very successful track record of turning high school stars into college stars into NBA prospects. That's what's kept that going. And that will keep it going in the future as long as John and his staff continue to do the job that they're doing. But that doesn't mean they can't be beaten. They might be beaten in this tournament, even though they've got the best players.
Yeah. Great points by Mike DeCourcy, the Hall of Famer in the U.S. Basketball Writers Association Hall of Famer. I got to clean the place up. I got to bring in a Hall of Famer here every now and then on college basketball coast to coast in the preview mode. All right, enough about the stuff off the court. Let's get to the stuff on the court. Of these 4 different regionals, which one really intrigues you the most? If I had to make you pick one that intrigues you the most and why, what would you say?
I would probably go with the East because Duke, the team I selected to be champion, is there, and they obviously are going to face significant challenges. But more so, it's because that's where BYU Alabama is. And look, I love a good defensive team. I covered Bob Huggins for 4 years. So I love a good defensive team. But the idea that these two teams that regularly hit the 90s and that regularly allow their opponents to come close to hitting the 90s, it's beautiful. I mean, the idea, the only time in my career that I can ever remember, TJ, I'm not a bettor. First of all, I've placed probably 3 sports bets in the last 10 years.
Smart man.
And none of them on college basketball, by the way, because I cover it. So I think there's a conflict.
Right.
Okay. So, but I wanted to know what the total was on BYU Alabama. I had to know that. I never look at that stuff, but I had to know, what do they think? And I think I've seen it set somewhere between 175.5 and 178.5. And I find that fascinating. And what it tells me, like when I see something like that, it feels like it's an easy money bet, right? And those always turn out wrong. Like it's not easy money, even though like each team has to hit basically 90 for that bet
Correct.
to cash, so to speak, within a margin. And it's like, oh, that they have to hit 90 because neither one can stop the other one. So, the idea that game will be played with the consequence that it has, I can't wait to watch that.
And that's the buildup before the Duke-Arizona game. And they have a lot of history together, including Arizona having knocked Duke out of the tournament before. Duke also beat Arizona in a Final Four. We're going back 20, 25 years. They played earlier this year. You've got the Caleb Love factor with North Carolina beating Duke in Coach K's last game in the Final Four in New Orleans. You got a lot of backdrop in the East. I'm curious. They're all intriguing for different reasons, but I am curious all the way out west where none of the teams are Western teams, and John Calipari is there with a 10 seed with Arkansas. What do you make of that? What do you make of that bracket? Florida, Maryland, Arkansas, Texas Tech. Just give me a thought or two.
Well, for in the upper half of that, the Maryland-Florida game, if either of those teams plays the way they did on Sunday in their second round game, that's a lock. They're going home. If both of them do, it becomes a competition. Or if both of them go back to what they're usually doing, which is play great basketball, then it'll be a great competition. But either one that approximates what they did on Sunday, no chance, because the other team's too good. Florida was really poor against UConn for most of the game. Walter Clayton, I tried the hardest to try to get Walter Clayton to tell me why he was so poor for the first 32 minutes. And the best I could get out of him was it was a me thing. And he wouldn't be more specific than that. So I don't know if it was the moment. I don't know if it was how UConn covered him. I didn't think they did anything extraordinary. I think he just kind of felt it. And now I don't think he will. Maryland, on the other hand, Maryland's 3 perimeter players who are all fantastic just completely forgot that they had a front court in their game against Colorado State. For a lot of the stretch run, Derek Queen, who is, I really believe this. I believe that I would take him in the NBA draft, excluding the international players who I haven't scouted. But I'd take him ahead of everybody but Cooper Flagg. I think he's phenomenal and has great potential as a pro prospect. And he barely touched the ball, even though he was being guarded by Ethan Morton, a 6'3" transfer from Purdue. 6'3", great defensive player for a 6'3" guy, but he's 6'3". Derek's 6'10", 6'11", and they never threw him the ball until that last trip. So Maryland can't do that this time. And that's what we'll watch in that game. I believe on Friday. Very excited to. I'm sorry, on Thursday.
Thursday night. Right, right.
Yeah. That the West. I always remember West and East are Thursday because I had to have BYU in one of them for my Fox bracket. Always had to stay on top of that. Texas Tech and Arkansas. The problem Arkansas has in this game is that Texas Tech's offense is greatly superior to what they faced in the second round against St. John's. This team can shoot. They can score at the rim. It's going to take a much better defensive effort even than the one they delivered on Saturday against St. John's. St. John's, once R.J. Lewis couldn't make a couple of jumpers and Kadari Richmond couldn't go by anybody or bully anybody in his matchup. And I love both those players, but they couldn't get done what they needed to get done for that game to belong to St. John's. So Arkansas had a very good matchup in the second round. This is different. This is a much more capable offensive team, and Arkansas is going to have to be at the absolute top of their game defensively to win.
Couple of more minutes in the preview mode. Let's just pick it up on that. Is Arkansas, I won't speak for you, but what is the story that we're not talking enough about? Arkansas is a 10 seed in this Sweet 16, maybe the job in the same conference that Chris Beard has done to this point to get Ole Miss in front of Michigan State. Is it another team, another story we're not talking enough about? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the most intriguing story in this in this Sweet 16 is Tennessee and Kentucky will play for a third time. And Tennessee will have played the third different edition of Kentucky Wildcats 2025. They have not been the same team in any of the three games because the first one, no Lamont Butler. He was completely out with an injury. And so they had to redesign their offense. They put Amari Williams on the ball as a point guard, even though he's a 6'11" center for a lot of that game. Crazy, but it worked. And then the second game, Lamont was back, but he wasn't back. He was out there, but he wasn't Lamont Butler. It said Butler on his back, wasn't Lamont Butler. Mm-hmm. And now he's much closer to who he is as a basketball player. He's not the All-America level player he was in November, December, January, but he is once again playing excellent basketball. And so Tennessee has to change up how they game plan for this game. Even though they've already lost to him twice, they're now playing a completely different opponent in some ways. Andrew Carr as well for Kentucky also was injured back and forth in some of those games as well. So it's a much more complete Kentucky they'll play this time around. Tennessee's going to have to play much, much better than they did the first two because they struggled in both of those games.
Couldn't shoot the ball really at all in the game at Rupp. And again, Jackson Robinson, to your point, the BYU transfer, played in the first game, but now he's been out for the last 3-4 weeks with the wrist injury, never to return. So it has been different there. And let's see the winners in the Elite Eight for that matchup. And then on the top of that in Indianapolis, again, you covered the Big Ten as you have for the last decade plus with the Big Ten Network. Tell me more about Purdue. It's a home away from home situation with Houston. Purdue obviously had an easier way to get to the Sweet 16 playing against a 13 and a 12. Are we not talking enough about Purdue? What do you say?
I think that this is a bad matchup for Purdue because Purdue's offense is based almost entirely around Trey Kaufman-Renn in the low post. There are very capable players around him, and Braden Smith's an All-American point guard, but the core of it is get the ball into Trey in the post and let him go to work and play off that. And most of the time, he's such a fantastic low post player with his touch, and he's got some of the best footwork that I've seen in my 4 decades of covering college basketball. But I don't know that I've ever seen a low post defense that didn't include Kenyon Martin that can destroy a low post offense like this Houston team can. I mean, I watched JT Toppin, who was an All-American for the Sporting News, a second teamer, I believe. I watched JT Toppin just basically, I'm not going in there anymore. They were in a game at Texas Tech, and the score was 49-44 for like 5 minutes because Houston couldn't get a bucket and Texas Tech couldn't make a layup because they just couldn't get through those guys. And at a certain point in the game, JT just said, I'm not, he didn't say it audibly, but he just said, not going in there anymore. I'll try to shoot from 14, see if that works. by the way, it didn't. So I don't think that this is a great matchup for Purdue. I think getting this team to a Sweet 16 is an amazing achievement for Matt Painter because they had a center, Daniel Jacobson, a freshman, that not that they thought that he would play a lot of minutes, but they thought that he would give them a defensive presence that this team never developed as a result. He's 7'4". He was going to be a spot minute player. Let's get him in to get some block shots and slow down this guy, and then we'll get him out before he gets banged on too much. But they didn't get to have him basically at all, and they still got to the Sweet 16. I think it's been one of the amazing coaching jobs, one of the underrated coaching jobs of the year. But if they pull this off, it'll be astonishing.
Yeah, let's see. And the other factor, I'm just going to touch on this, then we're going to move on, is Purdue's going to have probably 25,000 people in the building.
Yeah,
something like
sure.
that. That's going to be an effect on Houston if Purdue starts doing positive things, obviously. Same thing for Duke in Newark. They're going to have most of the building. Whatever they do, people are going to go crazy. Same thing probably for Auburn. We don't know for sure in Atlanta. The only one is San Francisco, where you don't really have a team that, hey, if they get rolling, the arena is going to go crazy. So just file that away. These are, after all, college players. The intensity, the emotion, the crowd, I think affects it much more than the pros. I'm saying that. Quick comment from you. File that away. Could be worse.
Yeah, and interesting. Arkansas is maybe the lowest seed left. So will the underdog Arkansas Razorbacks with John Calipari, will they light up the crowd in San Francisco if they have a great run? That'll be interesting to watch. I'm not sure whether John inspires the underdog mentality since he left UMass, but we'll see.
He'll play it up. How wild is it, just while you just jogged me, and I saw the clip this week, that the 96 Final Four is Rick Pitino's Kentucky team, is John Calipari's UMass team. Kentucky puts the game away in the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with Mark Pope at the foul line making 2 critical free throws in the last 30 seconds. Mike DeCourcy, we've lived long enough that's 30 years later, and Rick Pitino's at St. John's, John Calipari's at Arkansas, and Mark Pope's the Kentucky coach now. It's crazy.
If only I had started covering college basketball 2 years earlier, I would now be covering the grandson of somebody I covered in the '86 Final Four.
It's crazy.
If only I had started 2 years earlier, because I didn't cover my first Final Four until '88, so I wasn't there in '86. Milt Wagner with Louisville. I did a piece about DeJuan Wagner when he went to Memphis for our Sporting News magazine, and of course now with DJ. So I have a lot of fathers and sons, but not too many grandsons.
Oh my gosh.
And I just missed it on DJ.
One more, and I know you got to go. Just give me 90 seconds on the 2 Big Ten teams, Michigan and Michigan State in Atlanta. Michigan rolling at the end of the year to win the Big Ten tournament. Izzo is Izzo. His team is tough. Just say something about those 2 teams as we get ready for that on Friday night in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Michigan does because Michigan has largely there's a lot going on, but the core of their offense is that they have 2 7-footers, and who else does? And in Auburn's case, they're like, okay, maybe our guys aren't 7 foot, but our 6'10" guy is the national player of the year, and we have a 7-footer to go along with him. So that to me is very interesting. How does that work for Michigan? Can they be as overwhelming on the interior of their offense when they're playing against a team that has Dylan Cardwell as well as Janai Broome on the inside? They aren't one of those teams that they can just totally overwhelm. Now, of course, Danny Wolf can do a lot more than just bowl through you. He's a very, very skilled player. He will be a tough cover for Janai. I think this is a great challenge for Janai, because if Janai can conquer this one, if he can go out and guard Danny Wolf and make him ineffective, that says to every NBA team, you don't think I can cover on the perimeter? Watch me. And I mean, it doesn't have to be at the front of his mind, but it could sort of serve both purposes, because we haven't seen many people embrace Janai as a first-round pick, even though he's been one of the best players in college basketball this year. As for Michigan State, I think that they have a great chance here if they get back to being the team that closed the regular season and not the team that opened the NCAA tournament. They were not impressive in either of their first 2 halves. Unimpressive, honestly, in both of their first 2 halves. of this tournament. But they came through in the second. They played really well down the stretch against Bryant. They played well enough down the stretch against New Mexico. Got to play better from the jump. They have more in their game than this, and some of that is Jace Richardson. Okay, he's gotten through to the Sweet 16 now. He's got to start playing again like the pro that he is.
Stay tuned. Speaking of the pro that he is, Mike DeCourcy is one of those. I look forward to being with you in San Antonio next week. The Riverwalk, the green chili enchiladas. Oh, the basketball as well for the Final Four. Mike, thank you for hanging with me in the preview mode on college basketball coast to coast. I look forward to seeing you next week, my friend.
Thanks, DJ. We'll see you then.
Back with you there off the interview earlier this evening with Mike DeCourcy. Follow him at TSN Mike for the sporting news. Gave you a lot there from the Hall of Famer, especially on that South bracket that's coming Friday night in Atlanta. I have so many people inundating me. I'm going to mention it again that you need to utilize our sponsor, Ticket Smarter, trying to get tickets to this upcoming South Regional, Auburn, Michigan, and Michigan State and Ole Miss. For the best prices on the secondary market, use them. It's going to be tough. It's in the Atlanta Hawks Arena, the State Farm Arena in downtown Atlanta. Utilize Ticket Smarter, their mobile app. Best prices on the secondary market, as I mentioned, and our promo code is COAST20. You see it on the screen if you're with us on the video. If you're only hearing us on podcast, COAST20, C-O-A-S-T, COAST20 for college basketball. Coast to Coast takes $20 off your order. Use that code as much as you want. Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. Use it for concerts, baseball opening day, whatever you want, but in particular the college basketball. What a battle for those two games on Friday night, like we were talking about with Mike there a few moments ago, and I love his insight. It will be weird out in San Francisco with Florida and Maryland on Thursday night, followed by Texas Tech and Arkansas. Who gets the better travel fan base? I can share with you that I know numerous Gator fans, friends, colleagues, their families that are trying to get out there. It is obviously expensive. A lot of them were in Raleigh, which was easier to get to in the Carolinas from Gainesville, to then go all the way out to San Francisco. And some of them are banking on, are they going to make it to Indianapolis? And do we spend our money on that, on flights and tickets and hotel? I'm sorry, in San Antonio for the Final Four, not Indianapolis, where the Midwest bracket is. I mean, I get it. I mean, if you're an SEC fan, and granted it's regional, but if you're an SEC fan and you've been in Nashville and spent your money, and then you've scrambled to go, like Alabama was in Cleveland, Tennessee was at Rupp Arena, Arkansas was in Providence. Well, now you got to scramble somewhere else. Florida, as I mentioned, in Raleigh. Now you got to scramble somewhere else. In the case of Florida and Arkansas, you got to scramble out to San Francisco. Can you keep spending the money? Nashville to the first round of the tournament, to the Sweet 16, to then go to the Final Four, especially if Florida is expected there, or an Alabama as a 2 might be expected there. Just something to consider. I understand that. Anything else that we haven't covered tonight? I think we've been over it with Tyler Jones, Adam Zagoria, Mike DeCourcy here on this Wednesday night. As we head into Thursday and Friday and the Sweet 16, it is fascinating that there are 7 SEC teams that have made the Sweet 16 as we look ahead here. And there are 4 Big Ten and 4 Big 12 teams. Again, not the traditional Big 12 teams that you know, because, again, Houston's only in their second year. BYU and Arizona in that East Regional are in their first year. But the checks still cash the same from the NCAA and the units and the notoriety to have those 4 teams in. But it's incredible that 15 of the 16 teams are from 3 conferences. And there's a strong likelihood that the SEC is going to get at least 1, if not 2 teams in the Final Four. And dare we say, out of Tennessee, Kentucky guaranteed in a regional final, Florida's a 1 seed and Auburn is a 1 seed. Might they get 3 teams in the Final Four? Or will the likes of Houston, Duke, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Michigan State, Michigan have something to say about that for all of this? It should be wild. It should be a lot of fun. All right, I remind you again, take note of the fact we'll be here in the recap mode. That is coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. College basketball coast-to-coast platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. The live show, College Basketball Coast to Coast, will come your way If you're hearing us via podcast, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, we're also on the TuneIn mobile app, streaming on TuneIn on the College Basketball Coast to Coast channel. You'll hear recap coverage on podcast and on TuneIn, but the live shows, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Check us out here for College Basketball Coast to Coast. As you see on the bottom of the screen, we've been scrolling it all night. Jason Powers, Matt Zimick, Ari Russell with me, as well as our colleagues Deshaun Tate, Tyler Jones, who you heard from tonight. TC Martin's going to be out in San Francisco. We'll try to get him on. TC from the TC Martin Show in Las Vegas. Love his insight. Guests aplenty here from the different regionals. Our insider Adam Zagoria was with us tonight. He'll be at the Newark East Regional, like the Duke Invitational. It's going to be a pro-Duke arena for the most part. That's not to say that Alabama, BYU, and Arizona won't have some fans, but most of that arena is going to be Duke on Thursday night. Look out. Will the Blue Devils be ready to roll? Thanks to Adam. Read him at nj.com and the Zags blog. Read Mike DeCourcy on the Sporting News, sportingnews.com. Tyler Jones with the Jones Report podcast. I am merely TJ Rives. Enjoy all the games on Thursday. Thursday night recap show coming here on College Basketball Coast to Coast after the Friday games. Friday recap show. We love it. It's why we're here. It's our time of the year. The Sweet 16 narrows to the Elite Eight and eventually the Final Four in San Antonio. Thank you for being with me on a preview edition of College Basketball Coast to Coast headed into the Sweet 16.